hello, hello.
And welcome to the Hildebrand Law Firm topic for today.
I'm Kirsten Hildebrand.
And I'm Matt Kaplan.
And today we're going to talk about what not to put in your will because it can be confusing, it can be wrong, it can be just downright irritating, it can be whatever.
Unnecessary.
That's
Repetitive.
right. And just improperly placed in there.
Yeah.
So we have compiled some of the things that we have seen in wills that we don't think is a good idea at all.
Yeah.
So if you want to kick it off, Matt,
Sure.
Go right ahead.
So the first thing I think about is funeral arrangements. A lot of people think like, oh, should I put how I want to be buried or all of this in my will? My initial response is no, don't do that. And the reason is because the will is binding. What happens in the will stays in the will, and that's how the judge has to do your probate. So if it's in the will, it's binding. Here are some of the issues with that. What if you want a specific type of funeral, or you have specific type of arrangements, and those arrangements aren't possible, aren't practicable, aren't feasible at the time? Let's say you're on some wonderful hike in the Himalayas and you die. But your funeral agents say, I want to be buried in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I want 100 people there. I want zoo animals. I want clowns. I want a magician, all of that stuff. Well, you spent all your money on your hike to the Himalayas, and now you have no money left. So how the heck are they going to get your body all the way back to Milwaukee from the Himalayas and do all that stuff? And then at the end of that, there's probably nothing left for your beneficiaries. So that's just, a cheeky example, but funeral arrangements, don't put them in the will.
Well, and yes, and there's so many variations on that story. What if you are in a catastrophic accident and there is like really no good way to bury you the way you thought that you would be buried?
Sure.
That's also a possibility.
Yeah, I saw a story recently where this guy was mad at his dad, and no BS, he chopped his head off.
Whoa!
Chopped his own dad's head off, which is insane. And so, what if his dad had in his will, "I want an open casket"?
Okay.
How traumatizing would that be for the whole family?
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Good one, Matt. I like that one.
Thank you.
I mean, was that one of those like Florida men?
I think it was Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, okay, all
but
right.
As good as Florida Man, for sure.
Yeah. So, yes, in short, funeral arrangements are just, people want to follow your funeral arrangements, right? Like they're not going to, if you write them out on a piece of paper or if you tell someone, this is what I'd like, people are not going to ignore that. If you keep it outside of your will, then if you change your mind, you can. I'll give you an example. A close family member of mine thought that she wanted to be buried, but then at the very last couple of years of her life, she changed her mind and she said, I would rather just be cremated. And so those things sometimes can change over time. And then here you are in the last, say, 3 or 6 months of your life, and you're deciding something different in your head than what's in the will, and now you have just started a very good way for people to have an argument between family members, right? So the whole idea is to make things as clear as possible and not to start little brush fires in the family, and that would be a perfect way to start one. So we say thumbs down to having funeral arrangements in your will. What about organ donation? What do you think about that?
I don't like having organ donation in the will because, again, it's legally binding. So if something happens to you while you're healthy, then your family has to abide by whatever those wishes are. If it's not feasible, any of that. But also, there should be an organ donation section in your power of attorney for healthcare.
That's the more appropriate spot, for sure. And it also has the appropriate level of squish language, I will call it, because when you're saying in my will I want X, that's pretty definitive. And then if there's a scuffle in the family about whether or not that can be effectuated, it goes in front of the court. And if it's in the power of attorney for healthcare, then it is really up to the healthcare power of attorney to make that decision. It's not necessarily open. If your healthcare power of attorney is written well, it is not going to be open to question, and that person can confer with the doctor and figure that out. Which, by the way, did you know? So I've had a variety of opinions come through this office over the last 20, 25 years or so about organ donation. So every time I get like a nurse or a doctor or another medical professional who knows something about this, I'm always like, so at what age is this not an issue anymore? Like, does stuff get too old? And in the beginning, when I was asking that question, basically it was told to me that nothing is really good after age 40 or
Okay.
thereabouts. And so it almost felt like it was a little superfluous for a lot of people in older generations. But more recently, because I think the technology has improved and just the understanding of how different parts can be used, there's actually even ways to use things from very old people. So apparently, skin is something that can be used and is very, very helpful for those who have had difficult like skin issues or burns or things like that. So
We'll keep that skin healthy, Kirsten.
yeah, I did not know that. And I guess also eyes can potentially be something that could be used.
They wouldn't want ours though.
No, we talked about that
Yeah.
already, didn't we? Yeah. So anyway, organ donation, very, very important. I am pro organ donation. I think that it's definitely something that is totally up to the person and what they feel comfortable with and whatnot. But I think everybody may know somebody or know somebody who is alive today because of an organ donation. And so to me, I think that's a really wonderful thing in this country that we do.
But should it go in the will?
Should it go in the will? Thumbs down. Boop. I think not. Okay, next.
Next is IRA designation. I get a lot of people that ask me, "Oh, do I need to put the IRA designation in the will?" My answer is it's redundant. You don't have to because that's already done as a designated beneficiary at the IRA level. So whoever your IRA is with, you set it up, designated beneficiary to your spouse, maybe to your kids, maybe to somebody who you love. So there's really no reason to put it in the will because it's already set up on the company level. And putting in the will, again, makes it legally binding. What if you change your mind? What if you get divorced? All of these things. You want to make sure that it's set up well at the company level and then don't really need to touch it in the will.
That's an excellent point because, especially if the designation of who the beneficiary is, and there's 1,000 reasons why that beneficiary could change. Maybe there's a different way that the money has gone to an individual, and now you change the beneficiary designation, but yet the will says that it's going to Harry, and now the IRA designation is to Sally. And there's very good reasons why that was done, but now Harry can look at the will and say, I should have gotten that IRA as well, and now you have a fight on your hands. So it definitely creates an inconsistency, which is also potentially a problem. Now, the probate court, does not have automatic jurisdiction over an IRA, but there is always a way to start a lawsuit on this basis. So that's where you can really run into some issues. Also, what if somebody predeceases you? And now that IRA designation is indicated in your will, and there have been provisions put in place that would allow for successor beneficiaries or things like that. So there's just 1,000 different ways that it is inappropriate to have IRA designations or even references to these qualified assets in a will. It also, one of the beauties of having IRAs, 401ks, and other qualified assets is that they're not subject to probate, but now arguably you're making them subject to probate by having them referred to in your will. So it just creates this confusion that we certainly don't necessarily like to see. So overall, I would say this is a thumbs down. Do not mention IRAs, 401ks, or any other qualified asset inside of your will. So I think we are going to do a part 2 on this one.
Sure.
So thanks so much for joining us because we are here for your today and your tomorrow. And we will pick up part 2 on things that are not so good to include in your will. Take care.